Hi guys, and welcome to Crazy Burger. So we're going to have a look at the Super Console X3 Plus, which is in this lovely box here. Without further ado, let's get started with the video. Okay guys, so round about a year ago I done a review, a full in-depth review on the Super Console X Pro, and it had 50,000 games on it. It's just a little cheap plastic box, but it wasn't too bad. Once you got to maybe PSP and N64, the sort of gameplay, sort of performance wasn't amazing. But we now have the Super Console X3 Plus, and it's supposed to be an upgrade. It has a slightly better chip inside it. Should be a lot faster, better RAM, for example. Even up to 8K, not sure you're going to do that, but yeah. So without further ado, let's get this box opened and we'll have a look at this little device. Okay, so once you open it up, you get presented with, it's very similar to the Super Console X Pro. You get this box. So let's see what's inside. Got your Android side controller, which I'm not really going to look at. I never bought this to be Android thing, so yeah, let's have a look at the little box. It's definitely heavier than the Super Console X Pro. It's still got this packaging on it. It's got this heat seat fan at the top of it, which is good. Yeah, it looks alright. It's also a little bit see-through, you can see it. You've got some connections here. You've got an Ethernet connection, it's cool. I guess that looks like headphone connection, HDMI. You've got your power adapter here, and you've got two USBs. It looks like USB 2.0 and 3.0 I think, and then you've got your memory card in the side here. So interestingly, the memory card I got with this is a 256 gig, and it's actually a SanDisk Ultra, which is kind of unusual for these devices to actually have a decent memory card within them. So that just pops into the unit there. It's got this sensor on the front. I guess that's for the remote control if you're going to be using it as an Android box, which I'm not actually going to use. On the bottom it's got the model name of it. It says it's a X3 Plus, 4 gig RAM, 32 gig ROM, and the chipset is a S905X3. So the chipset in the Super Console X Pro was a S905. I'll leave some of the details of the stats and performance of this unit on screen so you can have a better look at it. Made in China, as always. So you can see it's pretty much a similar size to the X Pro. You can sort of have a look at the size sort of wise. They're almost identical, really. It's definitely heavier though. It seems a little bit more heavier, and it certainly seems a slightly better built unit. But yeah, so what we'll do is we'll get rid of this. Satisfying. We'll get rid of this. And we'll have a look at what else is on the box. Now apparently there's supposed to be 114,000 games on this. No doubt there is some duplication of some of the games, but even still, that's a lot of games. I mean, the original X Pro had 50,000 games. There was some duplication, but there was still a ridiculous amount of games. Looking forward to seeing what it's got and the performance and how it relates to the X Pro itself. Anyway, let's see what else is in the box. So inside the box you got yourself an HDMI cable. That's quite cool that it's included. Nice. You've also got a power adapter. Now I bought this from Amazon in the US, which obviously I'm in the UK. This is obviously not going to help me, so I'll just get an adapter, or I could maybe use the adapter from the original X Pro itself. It should probably fit. It's almost the same connection, so it should be fine. We've got some instruction manuals. Also got this 4 gig memory card, not sure what that's for, could be for the Android side. You've got a controller manual, you've got your user manual here if you want to quickly jump through it and look at it, and you've got these two controllers. No batteries, obviously they do take batteries, these things. They are wireless. Well, they come with a USB dongle which is inside here. You just put this into the unit itself, it should pick it up, but you need to fit, I think it's AA or is it AAA batteries? Yeah, it's AAA, two AAA batteries, and it should pick up. Now these things are pretty cheap. They do feel really light, pretty cheap, but you know, they're functional, they do the job. Not amazing, they've got all the functionality that as you'd expect from this kind of knockoff PlayStation controller. It looks okay, it works. I'd probably recommend getting maybe a 8-bit do controller instead, but for all intents and purposes, they are functional and they are okay, but definitely found there's a little bit of lag if you're using them on a large screen TV, for example. I'm not going to do that. I think I'll play with these games on a small monitor instead. Okay guys, without further ado, I'm going to boot this up. We're going to do a look through of all the games. We'll play a selected few. It's going to be a long video, so I'll put some links in the description of the different formats and games that I'm going to be playing. So strap in and jump forward to whatever game you want to look at and what platform I'm playing on. So here we go, this is the actual unit booted up. We've got, as you can clearly see, there is 114,000 games listed in the all games section. Now that's probably not strictly true, so there's definitely going to be a lot of duplication within there. When you actually click into all games, obviously it's all your favourites that are kind of listed at the top, but once you get through that you can clearly see the top here, there's a lot of duplication. There's going to be similar games on different formats as well, but if we jump to maybe some other obvious duplications, maybe go into sort of Amstrad, you can see at the top there, there's about what 5-6 different versions of the same game. It looks like these games have just been ripped from a site and they've just been left how they are. So there's probably not anywhere near 114,000 games. But regardless, there is still tens of thousands of games in here. There's a lot of games that you will take years to even go through. Yeah, so let's have a quick look through the actual games listed that we've got so far. We'll look at some of the details, some of the sort of options that you can change, and then we'll jump into the games. I will leave some chapters in the actual description if you want to jump ahead and go to a specific section, because it will most likely be a fairly long video. So let's get started. We've got Amstrad. You can clearly see, if you just press the A button, it is. If you actually look at the bottom of the screen, the buttons are actually round the wrong way. It says B to launch a game, it's actually A to launch a game. So the X and Y and A and B are completely round the opposite way. Now you can actually change that if you want to, if you'd rather, you know, A or B to sort of start. You can change that in the options if you see fit. It's really up to you, it depends what you're used to. But whatever you change, it still won't match at the bottom of the screen there, which is really odd. So to go between the two, you can just press left and right to go between the different sections. You've got Amstrad GX-4000, sort of word of warning just here, this one didn't work for me. We'll cover that a little bit more in the video, but it didn't want to load. Arcade games, there's a list, a crazy list. If you sort of jump back out, you can see there's 2,500 arcade games. Amstrad themselves, there is tons, 11,000 games, plenty of duplicates in there, but there are a lot of games. It is absolutely insane. So let's jump to MAME. You can see there's a load of games. There will be a lot of duplication between MAME, Fireburn Neo and Arcade. There seems to be a lot of different duplications there. Atari 2600, could be every single Atari 2600 game. Atari 5200, quite good to see that. Not one you see very often. 7800 as well. 64 games, I don't think there was a lot of these games made at the time. Atari 800 as well. Sort of 5,000 games. Unbelievable. That's going back a bit. Atari Lynx, there is 76 games. I think that's probably going to cover pretty much all of them. You can see this is pretty much all set up and it's pretty much good to go. There are a few things you may need to change here and there, like some of the arcade stuff you may need to jump between a different emulator. For example, I'll go back to arcade just to show you. This is the same with arcade, MAME and Fireburn Neo. You've got options of different cores. So if you get into one of the games, so you can actually hold down the A button, you can go into the different options that you can see here. You've got advanced game options. If you jump in here, you can see the different emulators. Now, not all of them will work with the same one. You may need to jump between the different options there. So if a game doesn't actually work, don't panic, just go into here and try and choose another emulator. Generally it's going to go between Fireburn Neo, Advanced MAME, and maybe even one of the other ones like MAME 2003 Plus, depending what year the game was made. So you may need to do a little bit of experimentation there, but don't panic, the games will probably work, they just need to be on a different emulator core thing. So yeah, that's the same with probably N64 is the other one where you need to maybe chop between different emulators. The rest are pretty much good to go and plug and play basically. But yeah, let's jump to the actual games we were at there, and let's look at the other options. If you press the start button, you come up with a few different options. You get emulate, you can change the video mode. I've got it up to 1080p. You may want to put that up or down. You may see some performance dips depending on how far this goes up to, and you can see your options there. It was defaulted at 720p, which is probably fine for most formats. So maybe you may need to up or down that. I mean, I've left it 1080p and it seemed fine for most of the things. Some performance issues maybe with N64, you may need to drop it down to 720p. And there's a lot of other options here. You can actually change where you want to start the boot at when you load it up. You can mess about with this as you see fit. Not really a lot of point, to be honest. So if you actually add your own games, you would go here and do update game list and it would automatically add your own game. We'll cover that at the end of the video, but what we're going to do is just concentrate on the games that are actually on here. I've not actually messed with any of these settings. I'm not really sure there's any point. You can mess about with this depending on how you like to see your actual games in action. Theme set, this is set to crystal. I'm not really sure I like this. You can actually change it to two different options you've got as standard. Let's have a look at what that is. You can see it change it to that. Maybe that's a little bit better. I don't really like this particular part of it, but it does look a little cleaner. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it back to what it was. It doesn't look as great in the text here, but I think the actual setup looks a lot better for me. But again, that's a personal choice. Lots of different theming you can mess about with this. Honestly, I'm not touching any of this at all. Screensavers, show clock, etc. Different options. Honestly, there's lots of stuff here that you may want to jump through. Network setting, you can connect it to the network. If you're doing sort of screen scraping, if you want to go into screenscraper.fr, set up your account. You can put the name in there if you're doing the scraper, which is here. So this is where you would actually put all the details if you're going to scrape some game art and videos and stuff, if you added some new games. So plenty of options here to get your teeth stuck into. Updates and downloads, you need to obviously connect to the internet. You can get some different themes, sort of updates, maybe even get some free games here and there. System settings, you can see here just different settings that you can go through. And really that's really it. There's a lot you can mess about with there, but yeah, we'll cover it a little bit more as we go. So Atari ST 7000 games. Again, there's a lot of duplicates as you can see there, but there's still a lot of games. Atomiswave, there's just a handful of games there. Wonderswan, well, lots of games. A lot of these games will probably be in Japanese because this was a unit that was solely really for the Japanese market. But there will be some games there that you can actually play through that you'll not really need to understand, which is fine. You got the Capcom System I, II and III I think in here. The usual arcade stuff from them. Oh, there's only 1 and 2 actually, there's not 3. Anyway. Colecovision. Pretty much every game, 173 games we looked at. Commodore 64, 6,000 games. Again, there's going to be a lot of duplication in there, but you can see there's a lot of games. You can actually scroll through quickly by holding the L2 or R2 button and you can just jump quickly through it, or you can hold down the Y or X button, I think it's the X button actually, to do a quick search. And interestingly, a new feature that you can see if you hold down the X button or Y button, I think it is, there's well, sorry, that's actually the favourite. So if I hold down the Y button, that makes it a favourite game, which maybe makes it a little bit easier to access. Hold down the X button. Let's see. Oh yeah, no, so just press the X button, you can do a quick search, because there's obviously a ridiculous amount of games. If you want to find your favourite game, hold down the X button and you can do a quick search. And there is save states, so you can actually access your save states from here as well if you do that in game. And we'll cover that a little bit as we go too. So we've got Amiga games, 4,000 odd. More duplicates as usual. Amiga CD32 games. There's a handful there. Don't think there was a lot. Anyway, 81 games, pretty much most of them. Final Burn Neo, more arcade stuff. Odyssey 2. There's a handful of games in there, if that's your sort of thing, 116. Intellivision, looks like probably most of the games that were made, maybe, and there's quite a good selection there. Vectrex. Now, interestingly, this didn't really work very well on the Super Console X Pro, the one that I had previous to this, but it actually works a lot better here. The controls are set up from the off, mean you don't need to mess about with anything, and the games work quite well. So if that's your boat, then that's certainly a bonus for this little unit. MSX, this sort of Japanese only sort of computer, MSX2. Now, a lot of these games may not be playable due to the fact if you don't know Japanese, you might not be able to play them. PC Engine, 400 odd games, that's quite cool. CD System, there's not really a lot here, only a couple. PC Engine again, that's really just more of the same, I guess. Some different games from the different regions maybe. Nintendo 64. Now this one is probably the most troublesome that I had to play. Some games play really well and some don't, and there are different options for the emulators. If you just jump into, if you hold the A button, you can jump into the different options. This is just per game. If you want to change the options for the full lot in 64, you would just do the start button and you'd change it there. But if you want to do it per game, which I would probably advise more, if you jump in here, you see your emulator options. It's set to auto for most games, but some games you may need to jump in here and change the actual emulator per game. Personally, I found a lot of these were actually pretty useless. Some games work really well, some don't. So that's a word of warning. N64 is kind of all over the place. Funny enough, I got a GoldenEye to work really well, which we'll show in the video later on. And I'll sort of go through that and which emulator I actually used to get it working. But bear that in mind, you're going to have to mess about with the emulator and settings. Most likely drop to 720p for Nintendo 64 as well, because I think that would definitely help with performance. So let's jump back out. We've got Nintendo DS, there's tons of games in there for them. 500 odd. NES, 1500 games. Now each of these has a little tune that you can hear in the background maybe, that's, quite cool, I guess, but after a while it does actually tend to get a little bit on your nerves. Okay, more hacks for Nintendo's system. You can go through them if you want some interesting stuff. Famicom, Family Computer Disk System, Game & Watch. Not sure why the heck you would want this in here. You may have some nostalgia for this, so if you do, you'll most likely find that one of your games is in here that you want to play. These are very basic stuff, I'm not really sure I want to be honest, but yeah, loads of Game Boy games. See, again, there's a lot of duplication in here. Hard to know how many games are actually on the system. I'm pretty sure it's a lot. It won't be 114,000 actuals, but I'm pretty sure it's certainly tens of thousands. It certainly seems more than the Super Console X Pro for sure. Game Boy Advance, nearly 3,000 games. Incredible. There's a lot of stuff in here. You sort of jump through them, you see the duplication there, but there's still a lot of games. There's going to be something for everyone here. This, if you bought this, you would not need to buy anything else ever again. This would keep you going for the rest of your life. You'd never get through all these games. Game Boy Color, Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, 3,000 games. There's a little bit of duplication between Famicom and Super Nintendo. There's got the hacks again for Super Nintendo. Virtual Boy, one of these ones I'm not really sure anyone would want to play at the moment. Open board games, let's jump through, look at them. Pretty cool. Now that actually reminds me, to exit games, generally it is select and start that you press at the same time twice in a row. For some of the formats, I think Open Board and PSP, you actually either need to press the mode button that is on your controller, and that will give you access to the exit screen. This is the same for MAME. Some of the MAME or arcade games you actually have to press in L3 and R3, which is the thumbstick. So if you press them in, it will give you options for the dip switches, and you'll be able to exit the games from there. Most of the games that select and start you exit, but you may need to jump between mode or the L3 and R3 buttons to manage to exit the games. Just a little word of warning there, because sometimes it's not totally apparent what the buttons are to actually get out. 3DO. There's a selection of 3DO games, there's only 14. Interestingly, you can see the cover star is Gex, but Gex is not even one of the included games, which is odd. Gex is included in Saturn, but there you go, it's not here. Pokemon Mini, I'm not sure why I'd want that. Ports, there's some nice ports in here, they actually work really well. These are quite impressive. Sega 32X, 60 games, that could be close to most of them. Sega Mega CD, 72 games. See, there's a selection of most of the games that you can see here. Not all of them, I think there's definitely a few I didn't see. Like, there's a few that was on the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2 that I didn't see in there, which was interesting. Dreamcast, got 23 games, obviously that's not all of them. There's some nice games in here. Some dodgy ROMs. Now that's something actually reminds me, there are some dodgy ROMs in here. Dead or Alive 2 doesn't work, if I sort of show you quickly. Now you might find that some of your games will not load or work. And it didn't really matter what core I used or emulator I used, it just won't load. There's obviously some kind of dodgy ROM. Now again, you can add your own ROMs. You can just remove this, put the memory card into the laptop or computer, and you can add your own ROMs as you see fit if you've got them. You can see here, this just jumps to this screen, it won't play. So yeah, so jump back out, select and start twice in a row. You can jump back out. So that's a bit of a shame. So you may come across that. Nothing really you can do about it, to be honest. But there's a good selection of Dreamcast games there, and they actually work really well on this system. Sega Game Gear, 400 odd games, very nice. Sega Genesis, 1600 games, some nice stuff there. Genesis Hacks, Master System. Got Sega Mega Drive. Not sure what the difference between some of these are. You get Mega Drive. This looks like a Sega high quality computer video game. Not sure what that is. There's a selection of games. I did play a couple. Couldn't really see much difference between these. Maybe there's some slightly colourful, more colourful graphics. I really don't know. I didn't see any difference. Sega Naomi. There are a few games in here. There's Dead Alive 2 in here. So even though it doesn't work on the Dreamcast, you can play it in here and it plays pretty well. Some of the games in here I felt actually stuttered a little bit. The performance wasn't amazing. Sega Saturn, how many games have we got? 14 games. This was one that was not included in the Super Console X Pro. You can see there's a nice selection of games here, but there's a lot of the big hitters missing. At the end of the video I will probably add a couple of the big hitters and we'll see how they perform. These ones seem to perform pretty well. You can see there's Gex in here on the Saturn, and they actually play really well, so that's pretty good. Sonic Jam, I played that, so really only the original Sonic games on the Saturn, and the performance was pretty sluggish, so kinda disappointing in that one. Sega SG-1000, 200 games, that's a kind of a Sega early computer. There's some games there that you can get your teeth stuck into. Sinclair ZX Spectrum, 20,000 games. Now this one's probably the worst for duplication. As you can probably see there, there's a lot of versions of the same game. Yeah, it looks like it's just been ripped from a site and they've not really removed any bad ROMs or alternative versions of these different games. Yeah, so there's definitely not 20,000 games in there, but there will be close to maybe half that, I would say. I mean, there will be a lot of games there. ZX81, sort of early Sinclair stuff. Not really sure I'm going to cover that in the video, but anyway. Neo Geo, some excellent stuff in here. There's 265 games. Neo Geo CD, there's 78. Neo Geo Pocket, Pocket Color, PlayStation, 700 games in PlayStation. That is insane. Interestingly, there was some Tekken games in here, but the music did not work on them, which was kind of odd. I'll sort of jump quickly to it just to give you an example. So I won't play it in the actual game. The gameplay seemed okay, and it didn't matter what emulator I used, but the game didn't have any music. Very odd. Okay, something that was quite noticeable was how slow the games loaded on PlayStation. It took forever, and you see it goes straight to the menu screen, and there is absolutely no music whatsoever. Gameplay is fairly okay, but it just seems like a bit of a dodgy ROM, I would say here. So if you've got a copy of this yourself, then I would maybe remove this and add your own. Not entirely sure what's going on, but it plays fine, just no music, very odd. Just some small issues that you find here and there, which is kind of annoying. PSP, There's some games here, there's not a lot of the big hitters that you would expected to see here. I'll have to add these myself. From the games that I played, they seem to play really well, so I've got no massive complaints there. There are 131 games. A lot of these seem like the sort of PSP minis or the PlayStation mini ones that, no, they weren't massively taking a massive strain on the actual system, so I'm sure they'll play well. I'll probably try and add some of the bigger hitters like God of War and see how it actually performs. I'm not holding up a lot of hope, to be honest, but we'll give it a try anyway at the end of the video. Supervision, this is a kind of new one for me. Some nice games added here, 47 of them. Uzebox, this is not one I'm aware of, but there's some sort of nice games here. I had the Bash at Arkanoid and it was absolutely brilliant, really enjoyed it, so that's a nice addition. 89 games, and that's us back to the beginning. So guys, sorry I prattled on quite a lot here. I just wanted to go through there and cover a few different options. What I'm going to do now is play through a game or two from each of these systems, probably missing a few the systems here and there. If you want to jump ahead, I'll leave chapters in the description. I may jump in here and there with a little comment to maybe explain some of the things that are going on. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started with Amstrad. So guys, this is what happens when I try to play Amstrad GX4000. It just doesn't do anything. I'm pretty sure there's something I'm doing wrong, or maybe there's something actually missing in the back end. I have emulated these games before, but if you are aware of what to do here, let me know, add a comment please, and maybe that will help out everyone else. But as far as I could tell, it doesn't actually work. I'm pretty sure there's something missing that we need to get these games to actually load. So guys, as I was explaining earlier, if you actually press the right thumbstick in, you can actually access a few different options. You can see dip switches in here, and then return to the game. You can change the controls as well, which is quite cool. And if you press the left thumbstick, that gives you the option to exit the game. It's not the same with every single MAME game, it's just for this particular one. It's the only way to actually exit the game, by utilising the left thumbstick option and exiting the game that way. I don't know why that is, but that's just, I guess that's just how this core emulator actually works.
Clack.
Something that's definitely quite apparent is that I love these bezels at the side, however sometimes you can't see everything on the screen, so in some certain instances you may want to actually remove those bezels and so you can actually see the full screen. So it is a little bit annoying. But yeah, they are still pretty cool. But yeah, you can tell there's some text missing. There are some other formats that it's probably worse, like Gameboy Advance is probably another one as well, that you really probably want to get the bezels removed. I think Game Gear was the other one. Cool bezels, but yeah, they're still missing part of the screen, which really isn't cool at all. Okay guys, going to jump in here now. Commodore 64 does take a little while to load. It might vary depending on what emulator we're actually using, but this gives me a good opportunity to use save states. Now to actually use save states, you hold down select button and R1 or L1. Now L1 loads, selecting L1 loads the previous save state, or select an R1 loads or saves a save state. So this is a good opportunity to sort of jump past this load screen. So if you are playing Commodore 64, create a save state so you can completely bypass the loading screen altogether, which is quite cool. Okay guys, this gives me a good opportunity to show you how to access RetroArch to be able to insert disc 2 in certain games. Obviously Amiga had a lot of multi-disc games, so what to do is press select and the Y button, and this brings up RetroArch in the background. You can do this for pretty much most of the games in this unit. You should be able to access RetroArch and be able to basically change any of the options that you would like to. So what you need to go do is go to disk control, select that, eject your disk that's currently in. We now need to load a new disk. Now find disk 2, choose it, insert the disk, and there you go. We are good to go. So you can do that with any games that are multi-disc. It works really well. So guys, just to jump in there, to access the Intellivision keypad, you press the L1 or the R1 button, and then you can choose your options that way. That's how the emulation works for Intellivision. Okay guys, just to chime in here, I couldn't actually get the games to actually start for some reason on the MSX. It's just a demo game that's actually running here. I guess you need to maybe sort of collaborate the controller or something and RetroArch in the background. Just not entirely clear what I'm supposed to be doing, to be honest. But the games do work, they do play. You just really need to probably calibrate the keys and the joystick to the actual joypad we've got here. Okay guys, so N64 was really a bit troublesome for me. I found that a lot of the games were really sluggish, pretty poor, very badly emulated. GoldenEye worked sometimes. Honestly, it has different results depending which emulator you actually choose. So there's definitely mixed results if you're playing Nintendo 64 games. Some will probably work really well, and some will probably start to stutter and be really sluggish all over the place, for example. Yeah, it's really one of those disappointing ones. And I've seen Nintendo 64 work really well, and I've obviously seen it working really badly. The Cruising USA is probably one of the ones that's all over the place. It doesn't really matter which emulator you choose within these options. Emulator here, there's quite a few different options, but none of them really work particularly great. Some look really good, but the performance is bad. Some look really poor. They play a little better, but there's a lot of frame rate issues. So bear that in mind when you're playing Nintendo 64 games. It's not the greatest at all. Some good, some really bad. So guys, what I'd suggest for that is maybe try and put the graphics down a little bit to 720p or a little bit, maybe even 480p, and choose a few different emulators. You may get better results.
Question number 2 now, please. Good, that's the correct answer. Get ready, here comes your third question. I am sorry, that's
Interestingly, guys, I found a few homebrew games within the Nintendo Entertainment System. Not sure why they're there, but they're there nonetheless. Stuff like Doodle World and Flea, which we played recently on the Evercade, is included within the list. There's probably a lot more. That's the only couple I found by accident, which is, I don't know, a bit odd. It might be the demo versions, I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, they are included. Really cool games, right enough, but yeah, I'm not really sure they should be there. I suppose not really sure any of these games should be here, really, but yeah. Okay guys, just jumping in here about save states. If you want to access your save states from here that you've saved on RetroArch, just press the Y button. I think it is by default. It says X on the screen, but it's actually Y. And then you can see here that you can jump straight to whatever save states that you've got, which is quite cool. I think that's a nice new addition. I don't think that was on the Super Console X Pro, so that's really good. You just press that and it should jump you to your save state that you've got saved, rather than having to go through the full game. And it does, so that's pretty cool.
Chief Cunningham, Gillian Seed is here. I brought him in as you requested.
Thanks for coming, Seed. I'm Benson Cunningham, the Chief of Junker Operations.
Gillian Seed. I've been transferred here from the 17th Special Forces Division.
I've heard all about your special training in the military, Seed. I hope you'll put it to good use on your new assignment here.
Experience the premier sports restaurant and entertainment venue, the Sports Cafe. State-of-the-art audio-visual, 120 TV screens, games, bars and a great restaurant. The Sports Cafe, where the games never end.
www.thesportscafe.com.
Now this is black and white, and think about it.
This victory, you battle 2, fight! Knockout! This victory strengthened the soul of Mitsurugi. You win! 未熟者が笑わせるな。
人だって容赦しねえぞ。俺の勝ちだ。
Get ready, fire!
こ
待たせたな。
Okay guys, just going to jump in here because Spectrum games are a nightmare for control purposes, so you actually need to get into the back end and sort of remap the controls depending what the keyboard controls were of each game. So it is a little bit of a pain. Sort of go to the options here in RetroArch, and you can see here I've remapped the joypad to match whatever the keyboard buttons were for each game. So left was Z and right was X and Dizzy. You can see here that the spacebar and enter was also used for A and B, which I think is jump and like sort through your items or something. So you probably need to do some digging on each of these games to find out what the actual button mapping was and then remap them to the actual joypad. A little bit of a pain and not ideal, and you're probably going to have to do that for every game because I couldn't get the games to work as standard without making a little bit of adjustment here in the back end. Not ideal, but yeah, at least they do work. It's just a little bit of a pain. Obviously, to access the on-screen keyboard of the Spectrum, you can press the select button and it will bring up the actual keyboard as you can see there, if you need to enter any codes or anything like that. But anyway, let's get started with Dizzy.
俺一人で10
Ready, go! What have I got?
Let's golf. Come on, you can make it. Oh no.
Okay guys, you need to exit the games, you need to press the mode button on your controller and it will access the sort of background here on the PSPP emulator, and you can obviously mess about with the settings and frame skip and all sorts of things here if you need to. For some games it's already set at auto frame skip, frame skip of 1 as you can see here. Just wondering what the actual resolution is. So you can see the resolution is 2 times PSP, so that's not too bad and that game's running pretty well. You can obviously use this for your save states as well. I'm not sure every game's going to work well here, but yeah, let's jump into another one. Okay guys, obviously there's not 114,000 games on here, but there are still a lot. I don't think it'll be that far away from it. There's certainly a lot of duplicates there. But in this part of the video, what I'm going to do is add a few of my own games, probably some PSP and Saturn games, see how they perform, and then we'll wrap up the video, give my final thoughts. Okay guys, once you put your memory card into your laptop or computer, you get the familiar sort of game structure that is pretty much apparent in every single emulation device. A lot of sort of consoles and folders where you can drop your ROMs. It'll give you an idea the file types that you can use. Now you can just drop your own in here and then go back to the unit and do a refresh, and your game should appear. So we'll maybe add a couple of my own games so that you can see that it does actually work. Okay guys, so I've added a few ROMs, a couple to Saturn and a couple to PSP. Just a word of warning, when you are putting your memory card into the laptop, not to try and format it, just press cancel and then you can access and add some games. If you press the format button, you're going to wipe everything on the memory card and it'll be a total disaster. So once you've done that, put the memory card back into the sort of console and then press the start button. And then you go to game settings, update game lists, and that will then add any ROMs that you've added to the device. Okay guys, so I've added God of War and Outrun onto the unit, and what I've done, I've had to lower the resolution to 1x PSP and put frame skip to 2. The performance is still not the greatest, however, and that's a little bit disappointing given that this unit is supposed to be more powerful. Its performance is not the best, to be honest. Really disappointing, I think. Okay guys, my final thoughts on this little console. There's no doubt it's a really good console. It's got a ridiculous amount of games. Probably not 115,000, but it's not going to be that far away. Certainly a lot of repetitive games there, here and there, that, you know, doesn't really add up. And there's probably a few bad ROMs in there that don't work either, so beware of that. The unit itself is kind of a noisy. It does make a lot of noise with that fan at the top. So it's not one you're probably going to keep on if you're going to use it as an Android box. It's kind of loud and quite annoying. It doesn't really heat up, so I suppose the fan is doing its job. But the performance itself, I think, is okay. There's no doubt the high-end stuff really is, you know, it's not the greatest. I would have expected more considering this unit has got more power. There's a lot to love on here. Dreamcast is pretty good. I mean, there's so many ROMs and stuff that's going to take you years to actually go through. Sega Saturn isn't particularly amazing. There's some good stuff there, but some bad stuff. You see, the performance isn't great on some of the games I played at the end there. PSP was the same, just disappointing. They're not going to play those high-end games very well. Like God of War just isn't going to work. You're never going to play it. Now that's disappointing. I would have expected more, since this is clearly a kind of an upgrade of sorts over the Super Console X Pro. And it is a lot more expensive. It's about $150 to $180. You can pick it up from Amazon US, no problem. There's plenty of stock there. Or you can maybe look at other places such as Amazon UK had it, but it was pretty expensive, such as Kinhank Direct, or go on to the usual AliExpress. You'll probably find it pretty cheap on there. But is it worth getting over the Super Console X Pro? It's hard to say. I mean, there's no doubt there's a lot more games on here. There's a lot more things that are not on the Super Console X Pro, such as Supervision. I think this one as well, Uzebox, isn't on there. There's a lot more ports. There's a lot more games. Sure, there's a lot of bad ROMs, a lot of repetitive, but you know, it's not bad. There's so many games here. It's going to take you years to get through, and I think once you bought this, there's no reason to buy any more boxes. Again, I would say, unless there's something out there that's going to blow us away with PSP, N64, Saturn perfect emulation, but for now it's really not there. I've seen it done well, like on the Steam Deck for example, it worked really well, but on these devices it's really very hit and miss. Some games good, some games pretty terrible. But anyway guys, that's my thoughts on this little device. I'll leave some links in the description if you want to actually purchase it. Thank you for watching, catch you in the next one, bye for now.